You've probably heard these before. Crack your knuckles and you'll get arthritis. Don't go out with wet hair or you'll catch a cold. Or the classic, feed a cold, starve a fever. Yeah, none of those are true. Hey everyone, Dr. Mike here. Today, we're busting 5 medical myths that just won't die. Myths your parents, your teachers, and maybe even your doctor might have told you at some point. We'll talk about where they came from, why people still believe them, and what science actually says. Now, I know it's fun to believe simple health rules. They make us feel in control. But in reality, these myths can waste your money, mess with your health, or even make you ignore real medical issues. So let's finally put them to rest, once and for all. Let's start with a myth that's been haunting fidgety fingers for decades. Cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. Admit it, someone's told you to stop doing it because you'll ruin your joints, right? We've all heard it at some point. That disapproving look when you stretch your fingers and pop, followed by the warning, stop that, you'll get arthritis. Here's the thing. No study has ever shown that cracking your knuckles leads to arthritis. None. Zero. Zilch. It's one of those health rumors that sounds scary but has absolutely no scientific backing. When you crack your knuckles, you're not grinding bones together or damaging cartilage. What's actually happening is that a small gas bubble, mostly nitrogen, forms and collapses inside the joint fluid. That satisfying popping sound, totally harmless. There's even a funny story behind this myth. A doctor named Donald Unger decided to test it on himself. For 60 years, yes, 6 decades, he cracked the knuckles on his left hand every single day, but never cracked the ones on his right hand. After all that time, he compared both hands. No difference, no arthritis, no damage, just the same pair of hands. He even won a tongue-in-cheek scientific award, the Ig Nobel Prize, for his dedication to answering what might be humanity's most annoying question. So why does this myth refuse to die? Probably because of the sound. That loud pop seems like something breaking, and our brains naturally link that sound with damage. It's the same reason people flinch when they hear a bone crack in a movie. It feels like something bad is happening. Add in years of parents, teachers, and even random strangers warning you to stop, and suddenly it becomes common sense. But that doesn't make it true. Arthritis isn't caused by cracking knuckles. It's a complex condition linked to inflammation, age, genetics, and repetitive joint strain. The kind of micro-motion that happens during knuckle cracking doesn't do any of that. In fact, several medical studies using imaging have found that frequent knuckle crackers don't have more joint problems than people who never do it. Now, of course, that doesn't mean every crack is perfectly fine. If you're cracking your joints and feeling pain, stiffness, or swelling, that's a different story. That could mean there's inflammation or injury in the area, and that's definitely worth checking out with a doctor. But if it's just the sound and no pain, you're good. You're not wearing down your joints or loosening them forever. You're just releasing pressure inside the joint capsule, and it resets after a bit, which is why you can't crack the same knuckle again right away. So the next time someone gives you that look when you pop your knuckles, you can tell them science says it's fine. It's just nitrogen bubbles, not joint destruction. And who knows, maybe you'll save someone else from worrying every time they get that satisfying crack. This one's been around forever. Wear a hat or you'll freeze. Most of your body heat escapes through your head. It sounds logical, right? The idea that your head is like a chimney, letting all your warmth escape into the cold air. But as comforting as that explanation feels, it's not actually true. This myth really took off because of a misunderstanding in some old military experiments back in the 1950s. The U.S. Army wanted to know how soldiers lost heat in freezing conditions, so they bundled them up in full winter gear, jackets, gloves, boots, pants, but left their heads uncovered. Then they measured how much heat escaped from different areas. Naturally, most of the heat came from their heads, because that was the only body part left exposed. The study results spread, people read the headlines without the context, and suddenly everyone believed the head was responsible for massive heat loss. In reality, your body loses heat through any exposed surface. Your skin radiates warmth wherever it's uncovered, whether that's your hands, arms, or feet. If you went outside without a shirt, you'd lose far more heat through your torso than your head. The reason it feels like your head is the problem is because during winter, we usually keep everything else covered. Heavy coat, gloves, boots, so your face and scalp are the only things left to release heat. It's not that your head is special, it's just exposed. The human body is smart about temperature control. When you're cold, your blood vessels constrict to conserve heat, prioritizing your core organs over your skin. When you're warm, they open up to release it. So whether that happens in your head or your hands depends entirely on what's covered and what's not. That being said, wearing a hat in cold weather still makes sense. Not because you're saving your body from a heat leak, but because your head has lots of blood flow and nerve endings, and keeping it warm helps you feel more comfortable overall. Cold air on your scalp can make you feel chilled faster, and covering it can make a big difference in how cozy you feel, especially in windy or damp conditions. The important thing is balance. If it's freezing outside, focus on keeping all exposed areas covered. Gloves, scarf, insulated shoes, and layers that wick moisture away. Wet clothing, especially sweat, accelerates heat loss way more than an uncovered head ever could. Staying dry is actually one of the most effective ways to maintain warmth. So no, your head isn't some magical heat chimney that lets warmth escape faster than anywhere else. It's just part of the whole system. Keep it warm if you want, but don't let anyone tell you it's the sole reason you're cold. Your entire body works together to regulate temperature, not just what's on top. We've all heard this one: feed a cold, starve a fever. It sounds wise, almost poetic, like something your grandmother might say while handing you a bowl of soup. But while it's been passed down for generations, it's not backed by science. The truth is, your body doesn't have two separate rules for when you're sick. Whether it's a cold or a fever, your immune system needs the same thing: energy, hydration, and rest. The phrase itself comes from centuries ago, when people believed illness was caused by an imbalance in the body. If you had a cold, you were considered chilled, so eating was supposed to help warm you up. If you had a fever, you were seen as overheated, so avoiding food would help cool you down. But modern medicine has shown us that's not how the body works at all. You can't regulate your temperature through food intake. What you can do, however, is support your immune system by giving it the fuel it needs to fight off infection. When you're sick, your body goes into overdrive. Your immune cells ramp up, your metabolism speeds up, and your temperature might rise as your body tries to kill off viruses or bacteria. All of that requires energy, which comes from nutrients. If you stop eating altogether, your energy stores drop, and that can actually make recovery take longer, even if your appetite disappears. Small, nutrient-dense meals can make a big difference. Hydration is another key piece of the puzzle. When you're sick, especially with a fever, your body loses fluids faster through sweating and breathing. That's why you often feel dry-mouthed or fatigued. Water, herbal tea, clear broths, and electrolyte drinks can help replenish what you've lost. It's not just about quenching thirst. Staying hydrated keeps your mucus thin, your organs working properly, and your immune cells moving efficiently. Food-wise, the best approach is gentle and nourishing. Think soups, soft fruits, steamed vegetables, rice, or light proteins like chicken or fish. These are easy to digest but still pack vitamins and minerals your body needs. Vitamin C, zinc, and protein all play major roles in immune defense and repair. You don't need to force feed yourself, but you shouldn't deprive your body either. And then there's rest, the underrated hero of recovery. When you sleep, your body releases cytokines, special proteins that help regulate the immune response. Skipping rest means your body spends more energy staying awake and less energy fighting the infection. It's one of the simplest, most effective things you can do to get better faster. So while the rhyme sounds clever, it's outdated. You don't feed one and starve the other. You support your body in both cases with hydration, gentle nutrition, and plenty of rest. Whether you've got a stuffy nose or a fever that has you sweating through the sheets, your body is working hard to heal itself. Your job is to give it what it needs to do that job well. Everyone's heard it. Make sure you drink 8 glasses of water a day. It's repeated so often that it feels like an absolute rule of health. But if you stop and think about it, where did that number even come from? Who decided 8 glasses was the magic amount for every single human being, no matter their size, activity, or environment? The truth is, nobody really did. This idea actually traces back to a 1945 report from the U.S. Food and Nutrition Board that suggested adults need around 2.5 liters of water daily. But there's an important detail that got completely lost over time. The report also said most of that water comes from the food we eat and other beverages we drink. That second part somehow disappeared, and the simplified 8 glasses a day rule took over. Here's the real story. Your hydration needs aren't a one-size-fits-all situation. They depend on tons of factors: your weight, activity level, climate, and even what kind of food you eat. Someone working outdoors in summer heat will obviously need more fluids than someone sitting in an air-conditioned office all day. And if you eat a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, you're already getting a surprising amount of water without even realizing it. Foods like cucumbers, watermelon, and lettuce are mostly water. Even things like coffee, tea, and milk contribute to hydration, despite the myth that caffeine doesn't count. Your body has a built-in system for regulating water, thirst. When your body needs more fluids, your brain signals you to drink. It's one of the simplest feedback mechanisms we have. For most healthy people, just responding to thirst is enough to stay hydrated. You don't have to walk around with a giant water bottle, timing your sips like it's a workout routine. There's actually such a thing as drinking too much water. When you overdo it, your body's sodium levels can drop too low, a condition called hyponatremia. It's rare, but it can be serious, especially if you're drinking large amounts in a short time without replacing electrolytes. Balance is key. One easy way to check if you're hydrated is to pay attention to your urine color. If it's pale yellow or almost clear, you're in a good spot. If it's dark, that's your cue to drink more. It's a quick, simple test your body gives you every day. No fancy charts or hydration apps needed. So instead of obsessing over hitting a number, listen to your body. Drink when you're thirsty, eat water-rich foods, and don't stress about counting glasses. Your body knows what it needs, and it's better at keeping you balanced than any outdated rule ever could.